Hi, listeners. It's Stephanie Ricca here with a quick note before we get started. Hotel News Now is changing its name to CoStar News, so our podcast name will change too in the coming weeks. Same smart reporting, same hosts, the great guests you've come to expect from us, just a new name that reflects our overall branding change from Hotel News Now to CoStar News. You don't have to do a thing, just keep listening and we'll take care of the rest. Thanks for sticking with us. Now let's get into today's episode.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Next Gen in Lodging, brought to you by CoStar News. I am your host today. My name is Chris Henry. I'm joined by two friends who are members of the LGBT community and who will be joining us to talk about Pride Month and their experiences working and traveling in and around the world. So we're excited to have Shawn and Erich join us. Shawn, do you mind taking a couple of seconds and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Shawn Hoctor. I am over 35 and married to my wonderful husband, Francisco. We met in Los Cabos, Mexico, where I was living for 8 years. And then we moved together to Dallas, Texas. And I've since moved back to Mexico City, and he's in Dallas. He's working for Hyatt. And I work for a company called Life Properties International that does luxury club development and residential sales. Been in this line of work for about 12 years. Prior to that, worked for luxury hospitality companies like Montage Hotels and Resorts, and a couple other independents.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thanks, Shawn, for joining. And Erich, do you want to give us a quick overview on yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Erich Schwartzel. I'm also over the age of 35. And I live in Los Angeles. I've lived here for about 13 years now. I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania and was living in Pittsburgh before I got a job out here that took me to LA. For work, I work as a journalist and as an author. And so for the purposes of our conversation today, I think one thing I always tell people whenever I talk about my job is its wonderful ability to take me to places that I would have no reason to go to otherwise, whether it's small towns in the US or other parts of the world. I'm working on a second book right now. I wrote a book that came out a few years ago that was about China and China's influence on Hollywood. So that required quite a bit of travel, as you would expect. And I'm wrapping up a second book now that's on Star Wars and the history of the Star Wars franchise, which we might want to get into this a little bit because it's relevant in a number of ways. But that has also actually brought more travel into my life than you might expect given the topic, whether it's going to fan conventions or, as I did last year, going to rural Tunisia to visit original filming locations of the movies. So yeah, so it's a great job, and one of the great things about the job is just its ability to send me anywhere in the world in search of a good story.
Erich, are we allowed to say what publication you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I didn't mean to keep that so coquettish. I work at the Wall Street Journal, and I've been in our LA bureau for the entire time I've been out here in LA, and I focus primarily on longer form enterprise pieces, investigations, magazine pieces, that kind of thing.
Perfect. Well, we're excited to have you both. Shawn, I know you've had the luxury of working in a number of states and countries as sort of as an openly gay man in the travel and tourism business. What has been, I guess, sort of the highlights of some of your professional experiences working overseas?
Some of the highlights are the places I get to visit. I probably haven't been to as many unique and different places as Erich has. My travels have taken me to, as it relates to work, primarily Mexico, all throughout Mexico, Belize, and a little bit to the Middle East, but primarily Latin America. It's been, the locations I go are ultra luxury, and it's just absolutely beautiful. I do work in development, so sometimes I feel like I'm a bad guy because we take a beautiful coastline and build hotels or clubs or golf courses or residences. But the companies for which I've worked have been lucky that they do things sustainably. They take the community into mind, and they work with the community to try and do development the right way that really integrates with the community in which we go. To that point, I've been fortunate to be out and proud, if you will, with some of these communities. The people are just extremely open, extremely caring, and because of the company as well, they come in with that kind of open mindset, that open heart. With the way they do development, it kind of brings everybody together, and there's I've never ran into any issues where I've ever felt unsafe. It's funny, people, especially in the U.S. Lately, you guys are in LA. There's people tend to have this fear of Mexico, or even of Latin America. I'm currently sitting on the border of Belize, and there's this fear of the unknown, or what they've been told about what's happening south of the border, and it's simply not true. The warmest, kindest people I have met, so in my work and in my travels. I just spoke to this morning a buyer of a luxury property on a private island in Belize, and I always ask our buyers, why did you choose this location? Why did you choose this property? Of all the places you could buy your second or third home, why here? And he said, the people. He said I instantly felt um, like family. They just welcomed me here, and they took care of me, and the people are uh, what really sells the stuff that we're selling. We like to say we sell experiences, and it really, it's true. It's our employees and the people of a particular location that really make it welcoming to everybody, whether it's an athlete from the U.S., an oil tycoon from Canada, or a Mexican family that's in the infrastructure business. They take care of everybody the same, uh, with that just kind of that open, familial uh, care, I guess, the tenderness.
And Eric, with all your travel that you do, and also being an openly gay man and married and traveling to some pretty exotic places, um, uh, have most of your experiences dealing with hotel teams at overseas properties have been positive, or have you encountered some challenges, or what's sort of been your overall experience?
I have to say, I don't have any horror stories to share. I mean, I've taken trips with. I do have to say, we have to demote it though. I'm not married. I have a long-term partner, so I will correct the record. Just in case any friends and family listen to this and think that I've been keeping some giant life development from them. But we've traveled together, and and certainly have had the experiences of uh, you know certainly having a kind of like getting one room, and the person assuming we will need two beds, and not being in a position to really want to correct them. And but traveling solo, I have a couple considerations depending on where I'm going, because I might be traveling to countries where it is more dangerous to be gay or to be openly gay. Um, but I also might have considerations as a journalist to keep in mind too, right? So, traveling in China, for instance, I've never had moments where I felt certainly like I needed to be careful about being gay and being openly gay man, but and it's probably a luxury afforded to me as an American who's visiting, but I do have to take considerations and caution whenever I'm thinking about my reporting tactics and what I'm doing with my notes and what I do whenever I leave the hotel room, because we know that in some of these countries there's going to be more aggressive sort of surveillance. I've also had experiences though where I was in when I was in Tunisia, another country where it can be very fraught to be openly gay. I have to say, like, the hotels that I stayed in some rural hotels, but that was like I was a solo traveler. And then the hotels I stayed in Tunis were pretty Western in atmosphere and in kind of approach. And so they can kind of have that effect, that bizarre effect of feeling like you could be in any world capital. Once you're inside its borders. I did have this very funny experience though that sort of is a bit tangential whenever I was doing some reporting in Kenya, where I was in some small towns. And Kenya is an extremely Christian country. And when I checked into this hotel, there was a sign on the wall that said that they would not be selling rooms to unmarried couples who wanted to stay together. So it's like, well, I don't think they're not even addressing LGBT travelers there. They're just sort of saying we're not even going to let unmarried couples share a bed while they're here. And so you see that kind of sort of like very conservative mindset. But no, I mean, I've been very fortunate in having like largely positive experiences, and in a lot of these countries, just by virtue of maybe whether it's socializing or in the course of reporting, meeting other uh gay people who live there and talking to them about their experiences living there day to day, which is only richer and gives you even more of a flavor of what life is like there. To Sean's point, beyond just like what we might assume from a distance it must be like.
It's funny that you mentioned that Kenya story. Is that I had an interesting experience in northeastern Malaysia a few years ago. And Malaysia is a fairly prominent Muslim country, and the hotel, I'd never seen this before, but at the hotel there was signage about what you can and can't wear to the swimming pool. And this is a beach town, and the only appropriate outfit you could wear, whether you were man or woman, was full clothing, head to toe, in the pool. That was what was expected and required to be present on the pool deck or in the water. And it's one of those things, whereas when you're traveling as a gay man, and I was actually on that trip to go scuba diving, is you sort of only pack little booty shorts to go swimming in, and having to adapt to foreign culture sometimes, regardless if you're gay or straight, can um, sometimes throw a wrinkle into things. So I think it's sometimes important for hotels, especially ones that are affiliated with larger international chains, that when there are uh, cultural norms in a destination, that sometimes those do need to be expressed or put out there on their websites or web pages to inform travelers to that area, so that they don't have a last minute adjustment, so to speak.
Eric talking about Kenya reminded me this trip was many years ago, probably about 20 years ago. I went backpacking through Africa with my boyfriend at the time, and we stopped along on the way over. We stopped in Dubai, which is also somewhat notoriously anti-gay, and we checked into the Ritz Carlton, and there was zero question whatsoever. That brand had, they knew who, I don't know just who their clients were, who their clients might be, and the check-in process was extremely easy and comfortable. No issues. The next night we stayed in a different part of town, downtown, and we stayed at a Marriott. And the check-in agent, like Eric kind of mentioned, it was fortunately they worded it a little bit better, and that it was there's one, they just kind of said there's a king size bed in the room, and I just nodded yes, and then that was the end of it. It wasn't one of those. Would you be more comfortable in a two in a room with two beds, which I've experienced in the U.S. But I thought it was really interesting that in Dubai, that brand, but both Marriott hotels, although I'm not sure if Ritz was Marriott 20 years ago, but it was it was for the beginning of a trip that we were about to take as a couple. It was really nice. Um, and then we did 5 weeks of backpacking through Africa, and I'll knock on wood, had zero issues really. We started in Nairobi, and then just kind of worked our way south, and for the most part, actually for the entire part, uh, fantastic interactions that we've had with different people in different villages and towns, and no issues there. I just think it's funny. The only time I've ever been to some conservative countries and areas of the world, and more for personal travel than for work. But the only time I've ever been called a name or heard a slur in my life, and I'm knock on wood, I'm really lucky. I know it's not the experience of everybody, but the only places I've actually heard anything that made me uncomfortable was in California. And I'm from Arizona myself, but in California, and it's been years. It's been a long time, but there were times in San Luis Obispo and where not nice names were said. So it's interesting that the worst experiences I've had have been in the U.S. versus anywhere else in the world.
I don't want to dive into it too much, but it was interesting you're mentioning. So, my ex and I, we were in the Middle East because my ex works in Egypt quite a bit. And I was sort of baffled by, we went to these really remote, almost Bedouin type communities out in the Sahara and never was asked a question, never was, told, you guys can't share a tent or you guys can't share a room. Let alone giving us rooms with one bed, and there was never a question about it. But in Cairo, at a Marriott, we had a horrible experience trying to check in and turning into not even turning to degrading to a pretty heated yelling match between the front desk and myself, which doesn't, having worked front desks in the past, usually, I try not to lose my cool with a front desk agent, but very insistent that we must have a room with two beds, that as two men, we obviously can't have a room with one bed. And I'm thinking, well, I know what your brand policies are, regardless of culture, because they're international brand standards. And I know what I booked online and got a guaranteed a reservation for. That is what I expect. Finally, the guy just got so frustrated, he just tossed the keys at us. And the next morning, tried to speak with the GM, who declined to meet with us. And then I even did reach out to corporate in Maryland to their DEI point person and didn't get a response. So I don't know if that just fell between the cracks or what, but I do think there's an obligation there that if you're part of a sort of an international brand, you got to stand up to your international standards, regardless of what the cultural implications may be. And thankfully,
But how many beds were in the room when you got to it?
2 queen beds in the room.
Well,
So
joke's on you.
yeah, joke was on me on that one.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but crack a smile saying that just now. I think that with where the world's at right now and DEI sort of becoming a dirty word and companies rolling it back, I do, oddly enough, I have to give Marriott a shout out for saying that they're not going to roll back, that they're going to stick with their DEI policies. That's obviously something appreciated. But what do you think are things that hotels can do better at facilitating a safe and healthy environment, both for their team as well as their guests?
I will say, on the sort of the policy front, one thing that I've been doing some reporting on has been the the kind of vibe shift that we've seen over the past several months when it comes to not just hospitality, but all kinds of brands and industries trying to avoid getting caught in any kind of political fray. And it was a pretty quick reversal after Trump took office in January, and it's just so striking because I was a reporter during the first Trump administration when it seemed like every company was like actively engaging in these political issues, and we had a lot of CEOs speaking out about them. And now it seems like a couple things have happened that has put the companies in a position where they are avoiding it altogether. I think partly that might be explained by CEOs who have wanted to avoid it all along and felt like they couldn't. I think the labor market shifting has affected that as well. I think workers don't have the leverage that they did whenever they would speak out about whether their company should be doing more to oppose Trump or oppose his policies. It is interesting to me that I think the hospitality industry might be sort of one of the last to have that vibe shift, just because it has, from where I sit, you guys would know better than me, but from where I sit, it always seems like it has been sort of on the sort of leading edge of sort of reaching out for the LGBT dollar, frankly.
John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It's exactly, how you ended, Eric, with reaching out for the LGBT dollar. Hotels are interesting because they are, they're global, or there are a lot of global chains, but you get visitors of all walks of life. I have hope that that hotel companies, the large hotel companies, will continue those initiatives, because they're not just in red states or blue states. They're not just in conservative countries and liberal countries. They're all over the place. They're around the world. They're in all sorts of different markets. And so those global standards are extremely important. Obviously, sometimes they're not always enforced, or they might have difficulties enforcing them, but having them in place is extremely important, especially in I don't know what's going on in the U.S., but something that this is Pride Month. This is Pride episode. It's lovely to see rainbow flags everywhere. Lovely to see the stickers and commercials and things that happen during Pride Month. And there's the memes about it. It all goes away on July 1st. It comes out on June 1st, goes away on July 1st. However, what I really like to see in my travels is, and I look for it now, which is weird. Is a little pride, a little rainbow in the corner of the window. Where we accept credit cards, and there's that little sticker. That little sticker goes for me goes a long way.
There was a video, and I don't know if it was on YouTube or Instagram or something recently, and it was actually a traveler who said exactly what you said, and that this particular influencer, like, they actively look for the pride flag, either hanging outdoors or in the window, a sticker, or somebody wearing a pin or a lanyard or something with a rainbow mark on it, that they were, to your point, Shawn, I was like, well, this is a safe place or a safe person that I can talk to, and they won't judge me. They were specifically talking about when they're traveling in this video, traveling to other cities. And I sort of stopped and thought about it for a moment and realized that I both actively and subconsciously do the exact same thing. That I have a higher, when I stop and analyze, I have a higher propensity to go into a store or to stop and ask someone a question if I notice they're wearing something pride related. So, Shawn, I think the fact that you brought that up naturally is just shows the value there of it.
Yeah, it really is something, that especially something I look for, especially, I've been to Mexico City for 3 months now, and it is a massive city. And I'm there alone. Paco, he stayed in Dallas for now, and so I'm kind of navigating this new city, not knowing too many people.
You found every gay bar already.
I have not been to one. I've been to one. I take that like I've been to one, but that's it's a reality, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful that businesses will sign up Pride Month. I can't talk about it right now. Like there's flags flying all over the place in Mexico, and a friend of mine who's actually a Mexican living in Canada right now sent me a video of people tearing down a flag in Mexico City, and he was just heartbroken. But for as many of those videos there are, I think there are more in a Mexico City being Mexico being a Catholic country. Um, there are many more flags flying than flags being ripped down this month. One of the largest prides in the world happening at the end of this month. But to know that after it goes away, there's still hundreds, if not thousands, and tens of thousands of businesses that still show their support long after Pride Month is extremely important.
So, Shawn, and you started to touch on this, but I want to give you an opportunity to share it because I think it's really important. Is that you and your husband 3-4 years ago now did a destination wedding, and you did it in Mexico, which you just said is a very Catholic country. What was the experience like having to go to the hotels and to the restaurants and to the venues and the purveyors of goods? What was it like having to work in Mexico to set that up? Were there challenges or were there issues you encountered, or did everybody take it actually pretty evenly?
Surprisingly, pretty evenly. It was, we got married in the south of Mexico, which is in a state and city called Oaxaca, which is, again, when you learn about Mexico, it's probably less Catholic than the center of the country, only because it's still very indigenous in the south of the country. While Catholicism is large and my husband's parents are Catholic, generally the people are they're not necessarily Catholic, and they're more open and form and nothing. We didn't, we zero issues with the hotels. The catering was absolutely fantastic. Our wedding planner, we somewhat chose her. We found her on Instagram, but we chose her because she had gay weddings in her portfolio. And the photographer, same. He had shot gay weddings, so we wanted to go out and shoot suits, not a gown and a suit. We kind of involved the locals. We did something, we had something called a calenda, which is a march through the streets, which they have enormous, 20-foot tall effigies of us, and normally it's a male and a female, and so they had 2 males, which was just phenomenal to see. And some of these vendors we didn't meet prior to, and they were so happy to show up and celebrate with us. Paco's family was they were while we got along, and they've been phenomenal in-laws. They were a little kind of hesitant about the whole wedding, but they walked down the aisle, they did everything, and it was actually wonderful. There was one a person who we wanted to officiate the wedding. It's a gentleman that I met probably 10 years ago on my first trip to Oaxaca, who owns a carpet store in the center of town. And it just when I would go back, I would visit with him. Really enjoyed his company, and so I asked him to officiate. And he contemplated. He said he would need to speak with his family, and he said, "I can't. Thank you so much for asking me. I will go. I will be a guest, but my family would prefer that we officiate." So that was, the only, and of course, we respected that, and it was wonderful that he came, brought us a gift, and it was, there's still some, I guess some apprehension, but even still, he was there. He was there to support. He just, the religious side of the ceremony, he couldn't partake in, but he was still there to support us, which I found was absolutely amazing, and speaks to the people that that are in Mexico, and especially southern Mexico.
No, thanks for sharing that. I would love to say I remember a lot of your wedding, but somebody was pouring tequila shots, and I've forgotten most of the wedding. No, it was a blast. Eric, when you and your partner, not husband, are traveling, how do you guys find your hotels? Where do you decide to stay? Is it through Instagram or just web searches or travel agent? How do you pick your places?
This is where I have to reveal myself as the lucky beneficiary of having shacked up with a total travel nerd. I've been with Kevin for 10 years, and it has been a graduate level course in travel and points and rewards. And so the short answer is I outsource a lot of it to him. And whenever actually I was writing my acknowledgments for my first book, which had me going back and forth to China and all over the place, I referred to him as my travel agent because he really does just kind of take care of every aspect of that, and I think takes great pleasure in it too. So I don't feel any guilt in asking him to lead me in the right direction. But I would say, like, it will come as absolutely no surprise that we're big Kimpton fans, that we're big Delta fans. I mean, we're every stereotype you can imagine. Just like, I think we try to source from a number of different places. I think ease of use is a big thing for us. We have a golden retriever that we're quite obsessed with, and we haven't traveled with him too much. Now that he's getting a little bit older, we're starting to think more about that, and that's kind of a whole new consideration, because I don't know if you've traveled with dogs but like, a hotel we have found is like an absolute nightmare for a dog, because there's just like, first of all, there's like room service trays everywhere. There's like lots of mysterious noises throughout the night that can set them off. So like, that's going to be another consideration. It's actually like, it's turned us on to JSX in a real way, because JSX makes it so easy to travel with a bigger dog. So these are some of the considerations we haven't had before, but I would say, like, it's primarily, I think, going with brands we know and brands we trust, depending on the city we're in.
Do you ever, when you guys travel, do you ever use any of the, or does he, when he's booking the travel for you, does he use, do you know any like LGBT focused like marketing sites like Mr. B&B or
Right.
other
Yeah, yeah,
ones
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
that?
yeah. All of those. Yeah. I mean, not so much as like a sourcing tool, but I think, especially when it comes to like trying to get to know a place and, like, sort of do our reconnaissance before we go. I think those kinds of guides can be quite helpful. Sometime when we have a couple hours to kill, I want to hear everyone's thoughts on the rise of the gay travel influencer. I mean, it really is quite a lane that some people have carved out for themselves, and I find it kind of fascinating. And I will even say, it's helpful when you're traveling internationally for many reasons, but it's even helpful when you're going to, other smaller places, when you want to try to figure out, where is the gay bar to go to, or I should say, like, what is the bar that on Thursday nights becomes the gay bar, right? Like, if it's a really small town.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the gay travel influencer because I know quite a few, but I'll tell you when I was trying to set up this Pride podcast, I was actually really trying to target because I wanted to give a voice to lesbian and trans travel influencers. That was my original plan. Unfortunately, World Pride threw a bit of a stick in my motor here. Lesbian and trans travel influencers I reached out to were occupied with World Pride or recovering from it, so they all declined. Tell us, or for our audience, the listeners, maybe share a little bit about gay travel influencers. What have you found other than thirst traps? What else have you found them trying to do?
Well, I think it's quite interesting. I mean, it gets to the point we were making about, like, the sort of like the economic play here, right? Because, like, I think there is like a massive market to be tapped, and so to speak. And I think, like, there's just this, like, so I find it quite interesting, like, how the Venn diagram has crossed over. I'm sure you saw the story in the Times a couple weeks ago about couples who love the Delta Sky Club experience, and the like one of the lead examples was this lovely gay couple who had gotten engaged in a Delta Sky Club. And so I find the overlap quite interesting. I've done a lot of reporting on like the influencer economy, and I know that it is, despite appearances, it is an incredibly hard path to forge because it's very complicated, it's very competitive, it's very crowded, and it just requires a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to look like you're always on vacation. I'm just curious, sort of like how it will shake out, because if you look at like other influencer economies, like it's a really tough, it's a really tough business. I imagine it's probably a little bit easier maybe if you're trying to sort of market yourself in the travel hospitality world, because there are so many sort of like branding and sponsorship opportunities. um but yeah, I gotta say, when I see some of those accounts, though, I think, my god, this looks like a lot of time editing photos in an internet cafe. Like that's all I see when I look at it. I'm like, wow, wow, they're really in a wonderful place, and I think that they're spending a lot of that time uh trying to figure out what pictures to post.
Have either of you spent? Actually, I know Sean, you have Puerto Vallarta going down. Eric, I don't know if you've gone down
No,
there.
never. No, that's still on my bingo card.
Same. I haven't been either. But Sean, I know Puerto Vallarta has become quite the gay destination. Why do you think that is? What is the market there done, or what have the hotels and venues there done to cater and make it such a popular LGBT destination?
Yeah, I was just there 2 weeks ago for Pride, actually. Um, it's really interesting because I was just talking to a coworker yesterday about Puerto Vallarta, and she said, uh, or I said, again, she's like, yeah, Ben. I said, did you stay on the gay side or the not gay side? And she's like, I'm not sure what you mean. She's like, I went to the clubs. And I said, oh, La Vaquita, Mandela. She said, yes. I was like, okay, you were in front of the boardwalk. That was the not gay side. There's a river that kind of crosses through Puerto Vallarta and separates what I call the gay side and not gay side. The gay side is an area called Zona Romantica, and there are no large hotels there. There are no chain hotels. It's cobblestone streets, quite obnoxious, but uh, all the streets are cobblestone, really old cobblestone, um, and it's just chock full of gay bars. Um, you know, I'll say gay restaurants. They're just restaurants, but they're flags all over the place all the time. There is theater. A lot of small towns in Mexico don't necessarily have theater. They have that theater there that has shows pretty much every night, drag shows, all sorts of different types of shows. Um, there's something for everybody. There, there's twink bars, bear bars, leather bars, bathhouse, party bars, the Baja Beach Club type thing. It's just got such um, diversity in what they offer, and we're not even talking about getting to the beach. Once you get to the beach, then you've got all sorts of uh, different hotels that are on the beach that cater to the gay population. You've got the gay hotel, and the restaurants. Eric said earlier about hotels catering to the gay dollar. They certainly know how to do that in Puerto Vallarta. All the restaurants that aren't necessarily, that are more, uh, they're on the beach. The gay restaurants and clubs aren't necessarily on the beach, but there are lots of restaurants along the boardwalk, and they know how to cater. Um,
In your
whether it be
professional experience, do you see that destination, as you mentioned, the gay dollar, do you see that destination being a long-term gay mecca, sort of like Fire Island and P-Town and Palm Springs, or do you think this is something that's hot for a few years and then will taper off?
No, it'll be a gay destination forever. And knowing the geography of Mexico, it's in the same state as Guadalajara, and so Guadalajara is a bit of a gay inland kind of destination. You know, maybe I don't want to quite compare it to Palm Springs, but it's uh, there. There's a lot of just between locals, people going between Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, and then obviously the Americans coming in. Um, I want to say I see it growing, but it's funny that river really does divide. And there's the families go to the other side, and then the gays go to this side. But I see that I see Puerto Vallarta being a gay destination forever. I wish they would. It has its downfalls. During the summer, it's extremely humid. It's the rainy season. There's mountains behind, and the mud and dirt that come through the streets. And the Bay of Banderas is not nice to see, but it's during the on season throughout the winter, it's a stunningly beautiful place. So I see it continuing going for quite a long time.
So, Shawn, is there something in particular, and I know we're running out of time here, but is there something in particular that the hotels do there that cater better to LGBT travelers than your average hotel? Because I was just thinking, you look at Provincetown in Massachusetts and Fire Island in New York, neither of them really have any major hotels brands represented. Now, when you get to Palm Springs and Key West, there are major brands there, and they're more than just a gay destination, though the gays love them. But you had mentioned that Puerto Vallarta in the Zona Romantica, that there's no big brand type hotels there. Is there something that those smaller hotels do better that the bigger groups could learn from in catering to LGBT travelers?
That's a tough one because I would imagine that 90 to 95% of our guests are gay. And it's a beach destination, so no shirt, no shoes, plenty of service, right? It's not something that you can go from the beach to the hotel with wearing the booty shorts that you spoke about at the beginning, and nobody's going to flinch an eye. And so it's allowing gays to be who they are, and so it's not putting rules and restrictions, which some of the big brands have to. So it's a little different. It's a little tricky, and that maybe why a big brand hasn't put their hotel on that side of the river, or rebranded. There are hotels, there are large hotels, but they're all independent. They might not be able to put their brand on that side because their brand standards would say we can't. Um, Pool parties that happen, or if families, if large families would come in, it would I'm holding up air quotes, make people uncomfortable. So it's just kind of a different. It's not adults only, but it almost feels that way, where it's gays and gay adults only. So it's just kind of a different vibe that I don't know if there's necessarily lessons for. Although you mentioned there are cities where there are hotels that are very gay cities. San Francisco, obviously, but Palm Springs has the Kimpton, and some other nice hotels there that I haven't stayed in those places, but I have to imagine that they cater to things that they get without sounding cliche, drag brunches or any brunch. They're able to cater to certain things that kind of attract us, if you will.
As our last bit here, because I know we're gonna have to end here in a couple of minutes, Erich, we didn't get to touch on any of your Star Wars stories. Is there a particular, maybe 1 or 2 minute story you want to share of traveling as a gay man to a unique part of the world in quest of Luke Skywalker?
Galaxy far, far away. I mean, there was nothing particularly gay about this. I guess I was the only gay person on this trip, but it just to show you just how um hospitality can reach anywhere. There's this company that I found in the course of reporting called Galaxy Tours that has put together these 6 to 7 day tours of filming locations across Tunisia, and this is like rural Tunisia, like down by the Libyan border. And it was really pretty fascinating because you're on these roads going miles and miles and miles into the desert because they needed it to look like an alien planet. And finding these sand dunes that it kind of felt like I was on a pilgrimage really with these folks. And I have to say it was astounding, especially because everyone in Tunisia, not everyone, but a lot of people in Tunisia have never seen Star Wars. They have no idea really like the hold it has on the rest of the world. And so it's almost like, imagine a bunch of people from overseas showing up to your like childhood mall and saying, this is a holy site. And so there was just this like amazing contrast where I'm with these folks who are dressed up in Jedi robes and taking photos and getting their action figures out, and I'd look, and then there'd be like these Tunisians hanging out just looking at us like, what the hell is going on here? But that was like definitely one of the coolest travel experiences I've ever had. And talk about a place I would never have any reason to go to otherwise.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. That's I can imagine, yeah, being out in the Sahara dealing with Bedouins, and they're looking at you guys dressed up, them being a little baffled.
Exactly. It was awesome. It was awesome.
You look like you guys were from planets far, far away. So,
Yeah.
well, good. Well, Erich Schwartzel, appreciate you joining us. Shawn Hoctor, appreciate you joining us as well. And Shawn, I know we didn't get a chance to really talk about you dancing in high heels at the Hyatt Owners Conference a couple of years ago, but there is photographic evidence of that. So that will live with
This
you
is
for.
true.
Well,
I'm glad
gents.
this is a podcast and not a video cast.
Yeah.
Well, gents, appreciate your time. Thank you. This has been Next Gen and Lodging, brought to you by CoStar, and we'll see you next month.
Hi, I'm STR's Isaac Colazo.
And I'm co-star's Jan Freitag. And together we are the data geeks behind Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast work.
Every month, we bring you a fresh take on the latest hotel data, insights into the travel trends behind that performance, and the big picture topics you should be thinking about.
And we also don't mind getting into some good-natured disagreement from time to time. Hey, when Isaac and I start talking data together, anything can happen, and it usually does.
Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen.
This episode of Next Gen and Lodging was recorded in June of 2025 by Chris Henry and edited by Rachel Dobb.